Jones, remove these snacks. I need a place to sit down.
June complained, but Jones totally ignored her, stuffing his face with the bowls of popcorn, chips, fruits, veggies, and hummus that he used to fill the whole sofa. June ran to the kitchen.
Mom, Jones won't create a space on a sofa for me and our show is about to start. What show?
Her mom asked.
Don't you know, Mom? It's December with the Galingtons.
Her mom rolled her eyes, went to the living room, and removed all the snacks from the sofa. They carried them and sat down. The show began. What they didn't know was that this year, December with the Galingtons was going to change the lives of the whole world forever, theirs included. Hello, my name is Martha Galington, and today, I'm going to be telling you about my crazy rich life and how I became a millionaire without anybody's help, despite the fact that I was still a cute, tiny baby. Before we proceed, hit the like button if you ever want to become a millionaire. Subscribe and turn on post notifications if you ever want to become a billionaire. Now, let's continue. I will start from the very beginning, when I was just a fetus in my mother's belly. So grab a popcorn and enjoy the ride. My family had a popular reality show called The Galingtons, where they shared their whole life, like normal reality TV. Some parts of it were acted, but people knew and still loved the show. The Galingtons was the most popular reality TV show in the whole world, and this made my parents and their whole family millionaires quickly. But my story is about how I became a millionaire without their help. Just my cuteness and some life circumstances. Every December, my family ran a special set of episodes called December with the Galingtons. This particular show was unfiltered. There was no acting, and everything was shot raw. It was more like a live TV show with no editing or anything like that. Our audience loved this segment, and even people who usually didn't watch our show throughout the year always tuned in for this one. On the third day of our special show that year, something unexpected happened. My mother, Brenda Galington, the richest and most popular of all the Galingtons, who was pregnant with me at the time, got into a terrible argument with her brother-in-law, Smart Galington. He had taken on our family name when he married my aunt.
"You good-for-nothing fat woman!"
he reacted.
Me?
My mom asked.
If anyone is a good for nothing here, it's you. Freaking gold digger.
On hearing the words gold digger, which was the worst thing you could ever call Smart, he picked up his muscular hand and gave my mom a life-changing punch. He obviously reacted without thinking and didn't take into consideration the fact that he was punching a pregnant woman. The pain triggered some pregnancy complications, and in less than 5 minutes, my mother was on the floor, shaking, and as everyone tried to lift her up and get her to the hospital, everything was being recorded and the whole world was watching. With the way my mom was shaking, everybody had almost given up on both of us. Nobody believed we would survive the hospital visit. Fans gathered around the hospital and did vigils. People around the world were praying for us and posting it on social media. The whole world went on a standstill, hoping and waiting for us to come out safely. The cameramen were everywhere and got everything. Some were downstairs recording the fans. Some were in the hospital room recording my mother in terrible pain. Some were getting all the prayer videos from social media and compiling them for live TV, while others followed and recorded Smart as he was arrested and taken to prison. After one long week of painful labor, my mother finally gave birth to a beautiful baby girl. The delivery process was caught on live TV, and the whole world was elated. Everyone had suggestions for my name. Strange names like Survivor and Strong Woman were flying around. My mom ignored everyone and said,
I'll call you Martha because you've proven that you're unique, just like your late great-great-grandmother. You will be her namesake.
While we were still at the hospital, brands and businesses already started reaching out, saying they wanted to work with me. I was assigned a manager who negotiated the offers and got the best deals for me. Before leaving the hospital, I was already worth $10 million personally. A few weeks after leaving, it became $50 million. Everyone wanted to work with me. Born as the most popular baby in the whole world, I had to struggle with the advantages and disadvantages of living in luxury. One of these disadvantages was from my uncle's family. Smart had been arrested immediately after the assault and was sentenced to jail for attempted murder. and was supposed to spend 10 years in prison, but 5 years with good behavior for almost killing one of the most famous celebrities in the whole world and her baby. His family hated the Galingtons for ruining his life and swore to get back at us. And they did. The next year, during another month of December with the Galingtons, they were able to break into the house. Somehow, they were able to spray a gas that sent everyone in our house to sleep. Once we were all asleep, they took me and left the country. When I woke up, I was so scared and confused. I was surrounded by strange-looking men, all wearing black, and I didn't even know where I was. I started wailing.
Shut that baby up!
The scariest one screamed. This guy was so huge, he literally looked like the Hulk. One of them picked me up from the carton I was placed in and started trying to cradle me. He smelled like sweat, smoke, and fear. I cried even more. He kept trying to keep me quiet, even got me a lollipop, but the more he tried, the more I cried. He got tired and wrapped a dirty cloth around my mouth, muffling my cries, dropped me back in the carton with a blanket and said,
"Now, be a good girl and you may just see your family again."
He winked and let out a loud laugh.
Nah, just kidding. You'll never see them again.
They all burst into laughter this time. Back at home, everyone had finally woken up. My mom walked drowsily to the nursery to pick me up, but I wasn't there. She immediately ran to the living room downstairs, hoping that someone in the family was holding me, but she couldn't find anyone. She found a letter instead.
Brenda, we've taken your dear Martha. Now you'll know what it feels like to lose someone. If you want to see your stupid baby again.
Bring 10 billion to Venezuela. I will know when you arrive. I don't know how you're gonna do it, but I'm sure you can.
You're the richest person I know. Sell your house or something. You have 3 days.
My mom fainted and woke up in the hospital.
What? What's happening?
She asked, confused. My dad was holding her hand.
B, you know you're accident prone. You fainted and hit your head on a table. You started bleeding and we had to rush you here. I read the letter they dropped, and I've taken a loan from the bank. We'll figure out how to pay it back later. I'm leaving for Venezuela with a jet immediately. I don't think you should come with us. You need to rest. It will be very dangerous. We can't predict what will go down.
Mom laughed out loud.
You must be kidding. Get my clothes.
Dad smiled and got her clothes.
You're too stubborn, but I love you anyway. Now, let's go get our girl.
And with that, they left for Venezuela, Dad holding Mom and caressing her bandaged head. Immediately, they arrived at the private airport. A few guys surrounded them. One of them said,
Hand me the suitcase.
We will only do that when our daughter is safely delivered to us.
My dad replied. The guy smirked.
You like to play, huh?
Another guy interrupted and said,
Follow me, sir and ma'am.
He led them into a black SUV and blindfolded them. My dad held on to the money suitcase for dear life. He didn't want anyone dragging it from his hands because he couldn't see a thing. The car later stopped and they were ushered into some place. The blindfolds were finally taken off and they realized that they'd been taken to a rooftop. Dean, Smart's elder brother, smirked at them.
Mr. and Mrs. Galington, richest couple in the world, right? Where's my money?
Where's my baby?
My mom asked.
Dean, what's all this about? We used to be friends. You didn't need to go this far. You can stop all this now, and we will forgive you for everything.
My dad tried, honestly concerned for Dean.
I want my baby.
My mom screamed.
Shut up, you two. Friends. Friends send each other to prison, right? Have you even cared to know just how our family has been surviving since you got him incarcerated? We're not friends. We will never be, so just be quiet. Hand me the money and you'll get Martha.
Sally, Smart's sister, came out from a hidden door. She was holding me. My mouth was still covered with a dirty cloth. My mom tried to run towards me, but Dean stopped her.
Money first,
he interjected. My mom grabbed the suitcase from my dad and ran towards Dean. She gave him the money and started running towards me, a huge, relieved smile on her face. Before she could get to me, though, I felt myself being swung. I was thrown from the roof of a skyscraper down to my death.
No!
My dad and mom screamed in unison, but before they could do anything, they were both shot twice in the chest and tumbled downward.
This is for Smart!
They screamed as they shot my only parents. The kidnappers followed a secret passageway that led to an underground tunnel. From there, they were able to sneak a few blocks away until they got to the spot where their car was parked. They got into the car and sped off, heading to the airport. On getting to the airport, they were confronted by the police, who handcuffed them and recovered the stolen money from them. The money was sent back to the bank. The kidnappers were arrested and sent back to the United States for questioning and trial. On the first day of trial, they all kept denying what they did.
What in the world makes you think that we could ever commit such an offense? She's our niece, for crying out loud. We could never hurt her.
Sally kept repeating.
But you can hurt her parents, shooting them twice in the chest?
Our lawyer asked. Sally rolled her eyes and said,
I could never hurt those fools, as much as they deserve it.
December with the Galingtons cameramen were covering the whole trial process, and the whole world was saying that the kidnappers should be hanged or electrocuted for killing their favorites.
Are you aware, Sally, that there were some cameramen that covered the whole incident? You were actually caught on camera, killing a whole family.
Our lawyer asked again. Sally, Dean, and Michael looked at each other, sheer panic written on their faces. It took Sally a few seconds to regain her composure, but then she did and said,
Everyone knows reality TV shows are heavily edited. They can put anything in there.
Our lawyer laughed.
Even in December with the Galingtons? A live show? Come on, Miss Sally.
Of course.
Sally replied.
The technological advancements these days are crazy.
It was finally time to cross-examine Michael, the last brother and kidnapper, the evil dude who put a dirty cloth around my mouth to make me stop crying and the dumbest one in Smart's family. As he was about to speak, my parents came inside the courtroom carrying me. They were all unbelievably astounded.
What are you?
Are you ghosts?
How are you alive?
We killed you all!
There. Mr. Lawyer, I guess you have your confession.
My mom smiled and left with her family. Smart's siblings were convicted of conspiracy, breaking an entry, kidnapping a minor, extortion, armed robbery, and attempted murder. They were each given life sentences. Smart wasn't given a life sentence because he wasn't aware of the conspiracy. Apparently, the kidnappers didn't know that my parents were wearing bulletproof vests, so the bullets couldn't kill them because the vests stopped them. They also didn't know that my parents were wearing mics in their teeth, so the cops could hear everything. Immediately, the cops realized that my parents were at a rooftop. They suspected that someone would end up falling or being thrown off, most likely the baby, me. And so, they surrounded the building with a soft, bouncy foam. It was more like a bouncing castle outside the building. I fell right into this stuff, and I was saved. There was absolutely no scratch on my body. A cop gently picked me up, removed the dirty cloth from my mouth, and took me to my parents, who had gotten the bullets out of their vests. They were so happy, but my kidnappers had already fled.
Never worry, sir and ma'am. My team at the airport and all around have been informed. They're on the lookout. Your daughter's kidnappers will be arrested in no time.
We were all safe, sound, and without a scratch. But guess what the best part was? The whole world watched everything as it unfolded because it was December. This made me even more popular. I was on the news in every country. Netflix contacted my family. They wanted to make a movie out of my life, and they wanted me and my family to act out exactly how it happened. You know we accepted. We were paid millions upon millions. More brands wanted to work with me, and every interviewer wanted to hear my story, even as I grew up and got older. In a very short time, I moved from being worth millions to being worth billions. Did you enjoy my crazy story? Tell me your favorite part in the comments section. Please like and subscribe for more amazing content, and don't forget to watch another mind-blowing story on our channel. We have a lot of them. And that's it for me. Ciao for now. I was sitting in the park with my best friend Paula when we heard a woman screaming. Help! Help! My daughter has fallen into the river. She can't swim. I looked at my friend Paula. We have to help her, I said, jumping up. I ran to where the woman was standing at the edge of the river. There in the water was a little girl about 3 years old. She was waving her arms in the air and crying. I could see she was starting to go under the water. Her mother was obviously in shock because she was just standing there doing nothing. I dived into the water and swam to the little girl. I grabbed hold of her just as she went under the water. Put your arms around my neck and hold on tight to me, I told her. She put her tiny arms around my neck and I swam to the edge of the river with her on my back. When we reached the bank, her mother came and pulled her out. Oh my God, you saved my daughter's life, she cried. How can I ever repay you? Well, I do need a job if you have one, I said jokingly. Actually, we do. It seems like you're really good with children, and we need a nanny if you're interested. I'm definitely interested. But before I go on, make sure you like and subscribe and hit that notification bell. Then you're sure to land a dream job like mine too. The first day I started my new job with Annie and Stephen Harris, I was so excited. Annie had seemed so nice that day in the park, she couldn't stop thanking me for saving Abigail from the river. Annie had sent me her address and told me to be there at 9 a.m. As I walked down the street toward Annie and Stephen's house, I thought about how my life had changed. One day I had nothing, no job, no prospects, and then the next I had a fabulous job and a really good salary. My friend Paula just needed to find a job and then everything would be perfect. I walked up the long driveway to Annie's house. The house was enormous. It was the biggest mansion I had ever seen. I rang the doorbell. A few seconds later, the door was opened by Annie, smiling. "Good morning, Becky," she said. Two cheeky faces were peeping out from behind her. One I recognized was Abigail. The other one was obviously her brother, Billy. "Hi, you two," I said and smiled at them both. "I'm Becky, and we're gonna have lots of fun together." We hit it off from the first day. The kids were adorable. I really couldn't believe how lucky I was. After work, I went to Paula's house. I told her all about my new job. "I can't believe how lucky I am," I said. "I have a job that I love doing, and the salary is amazing." "Yes, you are very lucky," said Paula. I looked forward to going to work every day. My bosses were both really kind to me, and the kids were so well behaved. It really didn't feel like work. They had a swimming pool in their garden, and on a hot day, the kids and I just spent all day around the pool. That was one of the first things Annie asked me to do. "We want you to teach Abigail and Billy how to swim," she said. As she said it, her face looked sad. I knew she was thinking back to the day that Abigail had fallen into the river. "Don't worry," I told her. "I will soon have them both swimming like professionals." The summer days went by in a flash. Soon it was September and the days were getting colder. I knew there wouldn't be any more swimming for a while. We began to spend our time inside the house playing hide and seek, painting, or playing board games. It was after a day of painting that things began to change. I had sat Abigail and Billy down in the kitchen with a glass of chocolate milk each, and told them to be good whilst I cleaned up all the paint things in the room. But when I went back into the kitchen, I couldn't believe what they had done. They had thrown their chocolate milk everywhere. It was dripping down the walls, and the carpet was covered in it. "What have you done?" I shouted at the kids. "Look what a mess you've made." They just stood there and laughed at me.
"Now you'll have to clean it up before Mummy sees it,"
said Abigail. "Yes, or you will be in big trouble," said Billy. I told them to go up to their rooms, and then I cleaned up the mess. I had no idea what had gotten into them. They had never misbehaved like that before. I hoped that it was a one-off, but sadly it wasn't. From that day on, things went from bad to worse. They did everything they could to make my life miserable. I couldn't understand what could have happened to make them treat me so badly. I decided that I would have to have a talk with them. The next morning, when Annie and Stephen had left to go to work, I sat the kids down in the lounge. "I need to talk to you two," I told them. "I want to know why you are being so naughty."
"Mummy told us to do it,"
said Abigail. "I'm sure Mommy wouldn't say that. Come on now, tell me the truth." "It is the truth," shouted Billy. "Mommy told us to be mean to you." Why would Annie do that? I thought to myself. The rest of the day passed by, and eventually Annie came home from work. When she came into the house, I went to speak to her. Excuse me, Annie," I said. "Can I speak to you about something, please?" I told Annie what the kids had told me, what she had said to them. I was expecting her to deny it, but she didn't. Instead, she turned on me. "Yes, it's true," she said. "But why would you want them to be mean to me?" "So you would quit your job." Then she said the most shocking thing to me. "I know you're having an affair with my husband." Of course I denied it. "You're wrong," I said. "We're not having an affair." Annie made me stay until Stephen got home from work. She told me that we would all sit down together and we would find out the truth. Stephen, of course, denied everything too. "I'm not having an affair with Becky," he said. "Why would you even think that?" Annie told us that she had noticed that every time it was my day off from work, Stephen was nowhere to be found. She said that when she tried to call him, his phone went straight to voicemail. "I know you two have been meeting up on Becky's day off," she said. Stephen told her that she was imagining it. It took us a while, but we finally managed to convince Annie that we weren't having an affair. Annie left to go to the kitchen, and Stephen walked with me to the front door. "Phew, that was close," he whispered to me. "I thought she was definitely going to find out what we've been up to." "I know," I said. "I don't know if we're going to be able to keep it a secret for much longer." "We have to," whispered Stephen. "I can't let her find out now." It was the following Saturday when she did find out what we had been getting up to behind her back. Stephen had booked an afternoon at a spa for her to get pampered. We needed her out of the way so that we could have the house to ourselves. It was just after 6 o'clock when she walked into the lounge. "Surprise," we said, jumping out from behind the couch. "What's going on?" she said. Then all her friends came out from where they had been hiding. "Happy birthday, Annie," we all shouted. Stephen took Annie in his arms. "This is what Becky and I have been doing on our day off," he said. "We've been organizing your surprise birthday party. You know I love you. I would never cheat on you." Annie looked at me and smiled. "I think I owe you an apology, Becky," she said. "No need to apologize," I told her. "Come on, you have a birthday cake to cut." After the party, things went back to normal at work. Annie told the kids not to be mean to me anymore, and they went back to being the cute, adorable kids that I had first met. Everything was fine for about a month, but then one morning I walked into Annie's bedroom and saw her standing there looking shocked. "I can't believe I trusted you," she screamed at me. "What are you talking about?" "I was right all along. You're having an affair with my husband." "No, I'm not," I shouted. "I found your underwear in Stephen's wardrobe." She showed me the underwear she was holding in her hand. "See, it has your name on the label." She was right. It was my underwear, but I had no idea how it had gotten into Stephen's wardrobe. I told Annie that I knew nothing about it. "Well, I have one way to prove it. You didn't know I installed CCTV in the house so that I could catch you out." "Come on then, I'll watch it with you," I said confidently. Annie and I went downstairs to her office and she switched on the video player. We watched until eventually we saw a girl walking into Annie's bedroom. "See?" she said. "That's you coming into my room." "That's not me," I told her. We watched as the girl walked over to Stephen's wardrobe and put my underwear inside. As she turned to walk out of the room, the camera showed her face. I gasped as I realized who it was. I couldn't believe my eyes. "That's Paula," I cried. "She's my best friend." Annie looked at me in shock. "I'm gonna confront her about this," I said. Annie told me that she would drive me to Paula's house. She wanted to get to the bottom of it too. We pulled up and got out of the car. I knocked on the door. A few seconds later, the door opened. Paula stood there and looked at us in surprise. "Hi, Becky. Hi, Mrs. Harris," she said nervously. I asked Paula why she had put my underwear in Stephen's wardrobe. At first, she denied having anything to do with it, but when we told her that we had seen it on the CCTV, she admitted it. "Okay, yes, it was me," she said. "You got a fancy job with loads of money and I have nothing. You knew I was poor, but you never offered to help me. I never see you anymore. You're always working. I wanted to cause you problems with your job so that they would sack you and then we could spend our days together like we used to." "Well, that has backfired on you, hasn't it?" I shouted. "You're no friend of mine now. I never want to see you again." Annie and I got back into the car and we drove to her house. I felt a little sad that I wasn't going to be seeing Paula anymore. After all, we had been friends for more than 10 years. When we pulled into the driveway, Stephen was just getting out of his car. He looked surprised to see us. "Where have you two been?" he asked us. "Let's go into the kitchen and we will explain," said Annie. We told Stephen all about what Paula had done. He looked at me. "You look upset, Becky," he said. I shrugged my shoulders. "I guess I'm just gonna miss my best friend," I said. Then Stephen surprised us both. "I think you two should forgive Paula," he told us. "I know what she did was wrong, but she only did it because she was missing you, Becky. I think she deserves a second chance. I think I have an idea." It turned out that Stephen had been telling his friends at work all about me. He had told them that I was perfect with the kids and they loved having me working for them. Stephen's friends had asked him to find a girl to work for them. "I think we could offer the job to Paula," he said. "Call her now and tell her." I didn't expect Paula to answer the call after the last thing I said to her, but it only rang for a couple of seconds and I heard her pick it up. "I'm so sorry, Becky," she cried. "Please forgive me. I just miss you so much and I'm struggling not having any money." "I do forgive you," I said, "and I have some even better news for you." I told Paula all about the job with Stephen's friends. She was so happy and of course she couldn't wait to start working for them. Finally, we both had our dream job, and more importantly, our friendship was still intact. I woke up to check on Joshua every night as I usually do, but this night was different. "He's missing! Why do the children of billionaires always go missing?" I said to myself frantically. I had been working as a babysitter for the past 10 years, and I thought I had seen it all until I began working with the Washington family. Hi, my name is Amanda. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Hit that notification bell so you'll know when new videos are uploaded. If you do, you have a great chance of finding a bag of cash in the near future. When my agency assigned me to this family, I had my doubts, especially since I was not notified that it was the Washington family, the largest mob family within the area. Well, that's the rumor anyway. Joshua, the child that I was taking care of, was 12 years of age. The first few days I expected to find frogs on my bed and snakes in my drawer, especially since I had an adjoining room next to his. But he was nothing like some of the rich kids that I had taken care of. My job was fairly easy since I didn't have to run behind him picking up toys. My duties included getting him to class with his tutors on time, helping with homework, and staying with him at all times to make sure that he was safe. Based on what I knew about him, he loved animals and wanted to be a doctor when he grew up so he could help people. He got to classes on time, did his homework, he even went to bed when he was told. This was the easiest babysitting job that I ever had. "Hi, Amanda. I hope that Joshua isn't giving you too much trouble," Mrs. Washington said. "He's a great kid," I replied. "Mrs. Washington and I will be going out of the country for 2 weeks. All we ask is you keep an eye on Joshua to make sure he doesn't get into any trouble," Mr. Washington said in an authoritative voice. That was the last thing Mr. Washington told me, and here I stood in front of the bed his son was supposed to be sleeping in. The bed was here, but the son was not. Nothing unusual happened that night to indicate that Joshua was upset and needed to blow off steam. As usual, I instructed Joshua to go to bed that night, and he did. I was frantic. I rammed through the mansion, opening doors, calling down the dimly lit hallway. "Joshua, are you there?" I made it down to the kitchen where Martha, the cook, was cleaning up the kitchen for the night. "Have you seen Joshua?" I asked, my eyes wide with terror. I did not want to think about what would happen to me if something happened to Joshua.
I haven't seen Joshua since dinner, but I wouldn't worry about it too much if I were you.
She smiled at me. Not worry? Joshua is missing. How could I not be worried? I threw my hands up in the air helplessly.
If you're worried about Mr. Washington, don't be. I've been working with the man for years, and under all the rough, tough exterior, he's a big teddy bear,
Martha said. Yeah, a big teddy bear that's gonna do more than smack me on the head, I thought.
He'll be back in the morning. The best thing you could do is go back to bed and get a good night's rest. Joshua is a great kid, and you, my dear, don't have anything to worry about.
Martha was right. I had no choice but to wait it out and see. It's not like I could go to the police because then Mr. and Mrs. Washington would be contacted, and I really didn't want that. The last 3 months working there had actually been great, and it wasn't like anything I expected. Maybe everything I heard about the Washingtons were rumors, but I really didn't want to find out the hard way. I returned to Joshua's room and I decided to sit in the chair next to his bed and wait until he got home. He had some explaining to do. I woke up the next morning and realized that Joshua's bed was made, but he wasn't in it. Damn it, did he even come home? I jumped up from the bed and ran to the kitchen as though someone was chasing me. There, Joshua sat having breakfast by the kitchen counter, having a conversation with Martha. I looked at him and at Martha, who smiled at me.
"Good morning. Did you sleep well?" she asked.
She had that "I told you" look in her eyes. I decided that there and then wasn't the time or place to drill Joshua about where he had been the night before. I walked out of the kitchen and went to get ready for the day. Why did Joshua disappear last night? Where did he go? Why didn't he try this stunt when his parents were around? I had too many questions and no answers. I needed answers before I had to speak to Mr. Washington. That night, I did the same routine. I instructed Joshua to go to bed, which he did without complaint. I got dressed, sneakers and all, and put my robe on and went to bed and waited. Sure enough, I heard my door creak open, then close. I jumped up and slowly opened the adjoining door to see Joshua climbing out of the window. "And where do you think you're going?" I said to myself as I quickly pulled off my robe. I felt my inner private eye emerge, and I quickly made it downstairs and out the front door just in time to see Joshua running across the estate. I followed Joshua. It's a good thing I had many years running down toddlers, so I was able to keep up at a safe distance so I would not be spotted. I watched as Joshua dodged between 2 bushes and disappeared. I quickly followed. There were 2 bars that had been cut to make an escape route. I squeezed myself between the bars and followed. He walked until he reached the shabbier part of town until he came to a narrow alley. I continued to lurk from the shadows. He stopped in front of a red door. I watched as he knocked on the door. A slot in the door opened and Joshua looked around before whispering something to the person on the other side. The door opened and Joshua disappeared into the room. I couldn't leave there without Joshua, but I also didn't want to cause him harm either. I needed reinforcements, so I called a good friend of mine, Tony Burton. I told him about what was happening, and he said he would be right there. "So what's the deal with this kid?" Tony asked as we sat in the van close to the alleyway. It was a dead end, so Joshua only had one way to get out of the alley. "Why doesn't his father just hire a bodyguard for him anyway?" Tony asked. "Well, for starters, I think all the rumors about the Washington family are false. I've been working there for months, and I haven't seen a henchman or even so much as a gun. All I know is something is going on with this kid, and I need to get to the bottom of it," I said. It was about 4 a.m. when we noticed Joshua leaving the alley in a brown pickup truck. Tony and I followed close behind. When I realized that they were making the turnoff to head to the mansion, I hopped out of the van. "Thanks, Tony. I can take it from here," I said. "Keep me posted," he said before driving off. I hid behind some trees until I saw the van exiting the road that led to the mansion. When I got to the room, I found Martha looking through my stuff. "Can I help you with something, Martha?" I questioned.
"Oh, Amanda, I knocked before entering, but when I didn't get a reply, I let myself in. I am just tidying your room a bit. You know the Washingtons want the mansion to be in top shape all the time," Martha fumbled. "Is that why you were checking through my suitcase that were closed and tucked neatly away in the closet?" I asked with a raised eyebrow. Martha excused herself and exited my room. "What were you looking for, Martha?" I mumbled as I placed everything back in my suitcase. Now, not only did I have to worry about Joshua, but I had to worry about Martha as well. Something was going on, and I wanted to get to the bottom of this. Martha knew exactly where Joshua was going when he disappeared. The Washingtons were coming back in a week's time, and I wanted to find out what was going on before then. Later that evening, Tony called me, and I couldn't believe what he found out. "So, it looks like little Mr. Runaway is actually doing some good behind that closed door. He's actually working with a man named Rob Gill, who is the founder of the One Love charity. They collect and distribute grocery items and other supplies to needy families. Oh, and Rob Gill is Martha's brother." I thanked Tony for the information and hung up the phone. I breathed a sigh of relief. It confirmed that Martha did know where Joshua was running away to, but why would Joshua keep something like that a secret? Why didn't he tell me or his parents? Before going to bed that night, I questioned Joshua about the intel that I received on him. "So, will you be heading down to Miller Avenue tonight, or will you be staying at home?" Joshua froze and looked at me. "So are you going to come clean, or do I have to tell your parents?" I added sternly. "No, please don't tell my parents," he said and sighed heavily as he sat on his bed. "I didn't want anyone to know because I just wanted something that wasn't to the Washington name, where people didn't think I had a motive behind what I was doing. All I wanted to do was help people," he said. "I have no problem with you going and doing something to help others, but I will be going with you from now on. It's my responsibility to look out for you, and I can't do that if I have no idea where you are, understood?" I said. Joshua smiled and nodded. That night, Joshua and I helped Rob and the members of his organization pack groceries for needy families. Rob actually ran a very tight ship, and I was impressed by the number of families that came each night to collect their supplies. "You know, if it wasn't for young Joshua here, we would not have been able to expand our program," Rob said as he squeezed Joshua's shoulder affectionately. The next few nights, we did the same routine, and I even got Tony to help a few nights. I felt somewhat like a superhero babysitter by day and amazing humanitarian by night. The night before the Washingtons came home, while packing goods into the bags, the police raided the organization. The police ordered everyone to lay on the ground while they searched the rooms. My heart was pounding, and I could see the fear in Joshua's eyes as he looked at me. After about 15 minutes, one of the officers said, "We found something, sir. Bags of diamonds stuffed in the chickens." I felt my heart rip out of my chest as the adults were rounded up and taken to jail while the minors were taken away by social services. As I was sitting giving a statement to a police officer, a man barged into the room. "My client had nothing further to say. I demand that my client be released immediately," the man said. He wore a three-piece suit and held a briefcase in one hand. I was escorted immediately from the room, and a few minutes after, the police officer told me that I was free to go. "Mr. Washington sends his regards," the man said before walking out of the police station. I was able to make a call, and Tony picked me up. "I need to find out where they are holding Joshua," I said. Just then, Tony's phone rang, and he answered. He looked at me and handed the phone without a word. It was Mr. Washington. "Joshua is safe at home. Come back to the mansion, and we can discuss this in the morning."
he said before the phone went dead. The next morning, I was called into Mr. Washington's office. I didn't sleep a wink the night before. I didn't know what to expect or what Mr. Washington would say or do.
Thank you for staying with us, Amanda. Joshua told us what a good babysitter you've been to him. He is still a bit shaken up from last night, but he told me everything and said that you wanted to protect him by keeping his secret. Now I ask that you speak nothing of what happened last night, and you swear loyalty to me and my family, or you may be facing charges for distribution of stolen goods.
Mr. Washington said slyly. What choice did I have? I swore loyalty to the Washingtons. I ran down to the kitchen to confront Martha. I was convinced that she knew her brother was a thief and he was using his organization as a cover-up. Why did she get Joshua involved if she knew this? I entered the kitchen, but Martha wasn't there. I asked the other staff if they knew where she was, and nobody seemed to have heard about Martha. How was this possible? I said as I walked to my room. Later that night, Tony called me. Martha's dead. Before I could hang up the phone, I heard a knock on the door, and then Mr. Washington appeared.
By now, you would have noticed that Martha is no longer with us. I have instructed staff that there was never a woman named Martha working here. Martha had a little accident this morning, and she is unable to report to duty. You see, Amanda, I reward loyalty with loyalty, and disloyalty with, well, you know.
Mr. Washington said before turning and leaving my room abruptly. The answers I wanted died with Martha. Maybe the less I knew, the better it was for me. I had no choice but to adapt to my surroundings. I thought about how different my life would have been if I didn't accept the job. My only goal now is to stay alive.
Good morning, David. Do you want some cookies?
Sure, Miss Rosie.
Just wait right there on the sidewalk. I'll bring them to you.
While I was waiting, Mark's golden retriever jumped on me and started licking my face.
Max, stop that! Oh my gosh, David, I'm so sorry.
It's okay, Max is my dog too.
Mark, do you want some cookies?
This was what a typical walk in my neighborhood was like. Ever heard of Sweet Magnolias? My town was just like that, but better. Everyone was so friendly and it was so safe that you could go to sleep with all your doors and windows wide open. We all shared with each other and there was never really a sad moment. But a crazy mystery that had been kept from me was about to ruin all of this. Keep watching to find out how. I lived with my mom, dad, and older sister, Laura Lee. My dad worked in tech and my mom was your typical housewife, like most of the women in my neighborhood. Laura Lee and I looked nothing alike though. She had straight black hair and she looked a bit Asian. I, on the other hand, had brown hair and blue eyes. We were not only totally different from each other, but we also looked nothing like our parents. We'd always tease them and ask them if they found us in baskets on their doorstep. We had no other family around. In fact, I'd never met any other family members. No grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, nothing. My parents convinced us that it was because they all lived far away. Then they changed the topic to something nice, like a discussion about family vacations, which we took a lot. That was the only weird thing, but we didn't care because our mom and dad were amazing. I didn't have a single worry, and maybe my biggest struggle in life was trying to figure out a math equation. Which brings me to my school, which was awesome too. All my friends there also lived near my house, so we'd always hang out in somebody's garage after school. Or we'd go to eat somebody's mom's cake, or we'd play video games or baseball. When I look back, I think that those were some of the happiest days of my life. But like I said, that was about to change soon. One day in history class, we were discussing World War I and how many families were affected. Our teacher told us that she was convinced that some of our ancestors had either fought in the war or been influenced by it.
So here's what I want you to do for me. Tonight, I want you to speak to your parents to try and dig up a bit of your family history. I want to know your great-great-grandfather's name and what he did for a living. This is a very simple assignment which is worth 50% of your grade this term.
That night, I decided to bring it up to my mom and dad. Mom, Dad, I need to bring some information about my great-great-grandfather to class tomorrow.
Why?
It's homework and it's worth 50% of my history grade this term. My mom choked on her broccoli and my dad began to tap her on the back.
Oh my gosh, get her some water. Are you okay, honey?
I'm fine. Now, are we still taking that trip to the Caribbean at the end of the month?
We're going to the Caribbean?
Yes, dear.
Then they started talking about the resorts where we'd be staying. And to be honest, I forgot all about my homework because I was so excited. Later that night, after everyone was asleep, I was up talking to my friends online when I remembered the homework. I decided to go to my dad's office to see if I could find anything there. He usually locked it, but he kept it open that night. I went through his filing cabinet, but found nothing there. I opened every single drawer, but all I found were documents that had nothing to do with our family. Finally, I checked his desk. I realized that there was one drawer that was locked. I looked around on his desk for the key, but I couldn't find it. As I was about to give up and go to bed, I noticed a shiny little object on the floor. I picked it up and realized it was the key. I tried to open the drawer. At first it wouldn't budge, but then I twisted it again with all my strength. Inside, there was just one big old-looking book. I took it out and opened it. It was a photo album, but it wasn't like an ordinary family album. As I flipped through the pages, I noticed that it was filled with pictures of babies with what appeared to be their parents. They were people of all races, and it even seemed like the pictures had been taken in different locations around the world. Who were all of those people? Then I heard footsteps approaching. I put the book back in the drawer and locked it quickly. I kept the key and ran up to my bedroom without anybody noticing. The next day at school, I didn't have my homework and my answers made no sense to the teachers.
Where's your homework?
I tried to do it, but my parents kept changing the topic.
Ridiculous.
Then I tried to snoop around the house for information, but I found nothing.
Absolutely ridiculous.
I'm serious. It's like he didn't exist. Or maybe my family just doesn't want to tell me anything about him.
You could have just told me the dog ate your homework. That would have been more believable. Anyway, you have detention after school today.
What? No. Oh, come on. The rest of the day was a drag. I did tell you that I had great friends, and they proved themselves to me that day. They waited for me outside until my detention was over, and when I was finally free, they suggested that we go to the pizza place downtown. Pizza is one of my favorite things in the universe, so that automatically cheered me up. They paid for everything, and I had a feast. But somewhere in the middle of my 10th slice, I noticed a silly-looking man in a green suit staring at me. He had the biggest eyes I'd ever seen and a long blonde mustache. He sort of looked like he was an actor on the set of some strange movie, or a time traveler, or an alien who wasn't sure how humans dressed, so he just decided to wing it. "What are you looking at?" He smiled and looked away. Weird. After eating all of that pizza, I went to one of the guys' homes to play video games, then I went home. As soon as I opened my front door, I started to feel angry again. My parents were in the living room watching a movie with Laura Lee. Hey, thanks to you guys, I got a detention today.
What are you talking about, honey?
I told you I had homework. You refused to tell me anything about my great-great-grandfather. I told my teacher the truth, but she didn't believe me. So not only did I get punished, but now she thinks I'm a liar. Which is worse, I am not a liar.
Oh no, I'm so sorry, sweetie. We'll go in there and talk to them tomorrow. That's really unfair. But soon this term will be over, and you'll be able to have some fun. Have you already started packing for our Caribbean vacation?
Not this again. I stormed up to my room. I stayed in there until everyone had gone up to their rooms. Then I went downstairs to the kitchen because I was starving. In the middle of my second salami sandwich, I started thinking about the album again. I stuffed my face, went back to my room to get the key, and went back to my dad's office to investigate. I took the album out and looked through it again, and then I found a picture that looked just like me as a baby. Except I was being held by a man and woman I'd never seen in my whole life. I flipped through the other pictures carefully. Then I saw one that looked just like Laura Lee. I went straight up to her room and barged inside. "Sis."
Oh my god, have you ever heard of knocking?
Sorry, but this is an emergency. Look at this.
What is that?
It's an album that was locked in a drawer in Dad's desk. Look here. I pointed to the baby I thought looked just like I did when I was little.
It's you, I think. But what are you doing with these people?
And look at this. I flipped to the page where I thought I saw Laura Lee.
Whoa, that's definitely me. But who are these people holding me?
Sis, I think our parents are keeping secrets from us. Don't you think it's strange that they can never tell us anything about our family? We've never met any of their relatives. We've just been here in this perfect neighborhood since we were little.
Maybe you're overthinking it.
Overthinking? So who are all those other kids then? I flipped through the pages and she looked confused.
We've got to investigate this. Okay, I have an idea.
What?
I'll scan a few of these pictures and use Google image search to see what I can find out about them. I'll tell Mom and Dad I'm sick tomorrow and I'll just stay in my room to do all of that. I'll leave the album here with me tonight. Try and get some rest and we'll talk again tomorrow night. Oh, yeah, and sorry about your homework. I know you were upset about that. I hope you feel better later.
Oh, thanks. Good night. I went to bed feeling a bit better, but also extremely freaked out. The next day after school, I went straight to Laura Lee's room. So, did you find anything?
No, nothing at all.
Did you search for every single picture?
No, just a few random ones.
Did you search for mine?
No.
I rolled my eyes, took the album, scanned the picture, then uploaded it to Google Image Search. Immediately, a few thousand results popped up. I clicked the first one. It was an article written when I was about 1 year old. The headline was, "Baby kidnapped while family was sleeping." I read on. Mr. and Mrs. McGregor woke up to find their baby's crib empty this morning. Officials suspected that baby Kevin had been abducted. This is not the first in a series of baby abductions, which have been on the rise lately. I stopped. I couldn't read on. I showed it to Laura Lee and her eyes nearly popped out of her head.
What did the other articles say?
We scrolled down and they were all the same. A baby had been kidnapped by smugglers. There were even a few conspiracy theorists who believed that the baby had been abducted by aliens. Do you really think it's me? I don't want to be called Kevin. Ew.
That's your exact face in the pictures.
She said while pointing to one of my baby pictures, which was in a frame on her dressing table. Let's scan your picture now. We did the same thing and we got hundreds of results too. Baby kidnapped in Singapore. The articles were almost the same as the ones that were written about me. We decided to scan every single picture in the album, and it showed similar results for many pictures. They were all abducted babies.
So what does this mean?
I don't think mom and dad are our real parents. But what's even worse is that they may be criminals. What if all these babies were kidnapped and smuggled too?
How do we find out?
We'll have to find a way to collect their DNA samples. Then we'll do a test. That's the only way. The next week was very weird. We bought some DNA testing kits and we tried to collect samples from our parents. This was a real challenge, but we managed to get our hands on their glasses just after they finished drinking one. A week later, the test results came back. Laura Lee held the envelope in her room and we opened it together. It proved the horrifying truth. Laura Lee was not my biological sister, and that man and woman we lived with, they weren't our parents.
What are we going to do?
I don't know.
I don't think we should do anything.
Why?
Well, we're comfortable here. They've given us a happy life. I don't want everything to change. Think about what could happen. They could get arrested. We'd be sent away. Do you really want that to happen?
I thought about it for a while, then decided I really didn't want my life turned upside down. And she was right. They had given us a happy life. So we did nothing about the situation. We packed for our Caribbean vacation like nothing was wrong. But the night we had planned to leave went all wrong. We had just brought all our luggage downstairs and we were ready to put them in the trunk when the doorbell rang. I opened the door and saw that same strange man in the green suit that I had seen at the pizza place a few weeks earlier. What do you want?
Where are your parents?
Mom, Dad, some weirdo's at the door. My parents came to the door. Then suddenly, I saw 2 policemen appear behind the strange man.
You're under arrest for kidnapping and trafficking.
Did you tell?
No! We are so sorry, children.
Apparently, the weirdo was an investigator, and they'd gotten a lead somehow. He explained to us that our parents had been wanted for a very long time, and that they were not even using their real names. They were notorious baby kidnappers and smugglers, and they'd have to spend the rest of their lives in prison. Laura Lee and I were split apart and sent to live with our real families. I was devastated. The story was all over the news. I had to fly 3 states away, and by then, my biological parents had 3 other children who all looked like me. I don't hate them, but I still prefer the people I originally called Mom and Dad. And I miss Laura Lee like crazy. Do you know the kind of movies where the babysitter is a psycho? Those movies had traumatized me since I was a kid, and because of that, I had no interest in having a babysitter whatsoever. But no matter how much I resisted, my parents got me one. They were busy, hard-working business people and had to stay out of the house most of the time, so I had no choice but to get a sitter, even when I was 14. But before we move on, like this video and hit that subscribe button and activate the notification bell, and you'll never have bad luck in life. Trust me, it works. I did throw 1 or 2 tantrums about that, but that didn't exactly work with my parents. But I guess maybe out of luck or something, my babysitter turned out to be really nice. She didn't talk much and was about my mother's age and didn't look creepy like the ones in the movies, so she was fine. At least, that was what it seemed, at first. She was my babysitter as well as our housekeeper. She cleaned all the rooms, made all my favorite food, and not just that, she even drove me to and from school. We got such a good deal with her. Who even works this much for so little money? My mom said one day while we were having dinner, and my dad nodded his head in agreement. I was also happy about that because I didn't have to do any housework, which I had to do otherwise for pocket money. Life was going good like that, but slowly I realized that the babysitter was starting to take more and more control over my life. For example, when she came to pick me up from school, she would start honking like crazy if I got out even a minute later. That was so embarrassing. I had to run to get to the car as soon as the classes were done and couldn't stay back and chat with my friends. Also, I had to finish up all the food she made for me and couldn't even leave one grain behind. And being full was not an excuse she would take. I was like a puppet whose thread was in her hands. Because of all that, I was fed up with her and wanted to get rid of her. However, my parents were not up for it. It was as if she had put some kind of spell on them. They were really pleased with her and her work, and there was also the part about having to pay her less. Of course, they had no idea about how she was controlling my life and making it a living hell. One day, I was just passing by my parents' room to get to mine when I saw that the door there was cracked open. But my parents weren't home at the time, so I decided to take a peek in, and what I saw there was bizarre and confusing. My babysitter was in my parents' room, dressed in my mom's clothes and jewelry. Well, that's odd, I thought, all confused about what she was doing. That led me towards one clear explanation. She was stealing from my mom. At that moment, instead of confronting her, I made up my mind that I was going to tell my parents all about it, expose her, and finally get rid of her. As soon as my parents came home that day, I went to them, running to tell them everything. "Mom, she's a thief. The babysitter is a thief," I told them without taking a moment to breathe. "What are you talking about?" Mom replied, all worried. "I saw her in your room. She was taking your jewelry," I said, and added that she should go and check what items in her room are missing. After hearing all I had to say, my parents called the babysitter to come out of the kitchen, and then all of us made our way to the room. There, my mom checked each and every drawer and closet, one by one, properly. "I don't understand, Eddie. All my valuables are right where I left them. Nothing's missing," Mom said. And as soon as she said that, the babysitter burst out crying and fell on her feet. What a drama queen, I thought. But she started blabbering out her side of the story, which was absolutely untrue. "I'm so sorry, Mrs. Zyper. I was just doing my job and cleaning your room. I don't know why the boy thinks I'm a thief," she said, crying out even louder now. And she was successful in fooling my parents with her crocodile tears. My parents instantly started apologizing to her as if their life depended on it. "We are so sorry, Maria. We didn't mean to hurt you. Eddie here just needs to learn a lesson," Dad said, and told me I was grounded for a month, and they were also taking away my pocket money for a week. You might easily guess what happened after that. She had more power over my parents that led to her influencing all their decisions that concerned me. I was honestly living like a prisoner in my own house. I had to follow strict bed and TV time rules. I had to eat whatever she made and could barely go out to play with my friends. Life was not so good, but after some time, I got really bored because of having to stay at home all the time. "That's it. If she's not letting me out, I'll call my friends over," I said to myself and texted my group to come for a sleepover because my parents were out that day. 3 of my friends came over instantly, and there was a lot of chattering, shouting, and laughing in the house. We played video games and ate a lot of junk food. I hadn't had this good of a time in so long. However, I could tell that Maria was not happy about it by the look on her face. After playing video games till midnight, we finally went to bed. I went to my room while my friends slept in the guest room. But something strange happened in the morning because when I woke up, my friends were not there anymore. Did they leave without telling me? I thought, but figured that their parents might have come to pick them up, so I didn't think much about it. Then, at school, I went to find my friends first thing, but all of them were ignoring me. I just kept on thinking about what went wrong, but couldn't figure out why. And to be honest, I was just done wondering. So at lunchtime, I went up to them in the cafeteria and demanded to know what was going on and why they were acting so cold towards me. One of my friends then took a long breath and started speaking. "Your babysitter is what happened. She scared the life out of us last night, man," he said, and told me that she warned them to never show up in the house ever again or talk to me. Otherwise, she would show their parents some pictures of my friends sneaking out of school, which could get them in trouble. "She's a psycho. I think you should watch your back and beware of her," he added. And that was it. I didn't even have friends anymore. After that, my life became very depressing and boring. And at times, I even felt like running away from the house. But let's be real, there was nowhere I could go. However, after what seemed like forever, I finally turned 16. And that was when my parents gave me the best news of my life. "Since you're old enough to take care of yourself now, we're getting rid of Maria," my mom said. Finally, I thought, and assured my parents that their decision was perfect. Then, the good times began for me. I could finally breathe the air of freedom. I could go wherever I liked, whenever I liked, and hang out with my friends as much as I wanted. They even started coming to my house for sleepovers again after I told them that the babysitter was out of the picture. And the best part was that I finally confessed my feelings to a girl I liked and got a girlfriend. Everything was going smoothly after that. Sometimes I would take my girlfriend out on dates. Sometimes I would hang out with my friends. But at times, I felt as if someone was watching me or following me. I know you might think I was being paranoid, but one time, even while I was on a vacation with my parents on a far-off island, I felt the same eyes watching over me. I was chilling on the beach and relaxing in the sun when I felt like I saw the psycho babysitter. Did she follow me here? I thought. But I brushed that feeling off quickly as I wanted to heal from the trauma she put me through, and also because I just saw her once, so I must have been mistaken. Slowly, I was able to erase her and the difficult times from my mind, but I had no idea what was waiting for me because a year after that, my worst nightmare came back. My parents and I were getting ready for the weekend brunch when suddenly the crazy babysitter came crying at our door. "Mr. and Mrs. Zyper, I haven't found any job since I left here. I'm so poor. Please, give me a job," she begged and cried. Since my parents were very kind and soft-hearted people, they agreed to keep her as a housekeeper without even asking for my opinion. However, this time, I decided that I will not let her have control over my life. I decided to put on my imaginary iron suit and be brave like an Iron Man. I am not letting her win this time, I said to myself and accepted my parents' decision. After that, just to show her that I was not her puppet anymore, I started going out more often. I would even bring my girlfriend over for a movie night or a video game. But then, something weird happened. I know, I should have expected that with the psycho babysitter around. The thing was, I was getting lazier. To be precise, sleepy whenever I had plans to go out. I had to find out what was going on, so I secretly installed some nanny cams on multiple parts of the house. And what the camera recorded was unbelievable and unacceptable. The video from the kitchen revealed that the crazy woman was mixing some kind of pill in my dinner, most probably a sleeping pill. That was the reason why I was feeling sleepy all the time. It was not some little thing I could ignore and let go of. I had to show everything to my parents and then the police. For that, I called my parents who were at work at that time to let them know about the situation. But strangely, none of their phones were reachable. So without wasting any time, I drove to my parents' office, and when I reached there, I got the shock of my life. My parents' colleagues informed me that they had not been to the office for 5 days. "We have been trying to reach them, but their phones are not reachable," one of them said. I thanked them and got out of there thinking I should wait for my parents at home. However, even after days of waiting, my parents didn't show up, but I thought maybe they went on a vacation without telling me. While all the bizarre things were happening in my life, my girlfriend also ghosted me and blocked me from calling or texting her. Sketchy, right? I had the same thought like you. It must be a maniac in my life. I was so done sitting back and letting her ruin my life like that. Hence, I decided to do some stalking of my own on her before going to the police. I picked a time when Maria was working in the kitchen. I sneaked out of the house secretly to pay a visit to the location she had provided to my parents as her home. It was an old and shabby place, and looking from the outside, it didn't seem like anyone would even live there except for ghosts. Because it was old, it was easier for me to enter the place. As soon as I got in, I was shocked because the walls of the house were filled with my pictures from when I was a baby to my first day of school to whatnot. I was creeped out and wanted to get out of there as soon as possible, but I had to see the rest of the house. Slowly, I went around the house like a rat, not making even a single sound, and there was nothing to see there. Really just a couple of pieces of old furniture and an old computer in the corner, which stood out to me. I opened the computer, and what I found out shocked me even more. It was the haunting search history on that computer. The search history showed that the psycho woman had looked up all my social media and government information multiple times on the internet. Also, the search history went back to years, which meant she had searched for me before even coming to my house as a babysitter. What does she have in mind for me? I thought, all scared and nervous. Right then, I was startled by the noise made by the squeaky old door. "Oh no, someone's coming in," I said to myself, but it was too late for me to run. I was so scared and my poor heart almost gave up when I saw the psycho babysitter enter. It was like all those horror movies all over. But I knew what I had to do. For that, I put up a brave face and, of course, the imaginary iron suit. "What is all this, you creep? Explain yourself," I asked. "Don't use that language with your birth mother," she shouted and told me that I was her son. She also told me that she had put me up for adoption because she was poor, but then she couldn't stay away from me afterward. "There's no point in hiding the truth now. I did everything out of love," she added, but I didn't believe her for a second. "You're a liar, and I'm going straight to the police from here," I said and started to walk out of there before she stopped me. "You wouldn't want to do that if you love your parents," she said and showed me a video on her phone. My heart sank like the Titanic when I saw that she had my parents locked up in a cage. I couldn't utter a word while the psycho woman laughed like crazy. She warned me that if I went to the police, she would harm my parents and then lock me up in my house. What should I do? I am locked in my house, guarded by the psycho babysitter. Should I take the risk of calling the police? Let me know your suggestion in the comments below. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and check out other videos on the channel.
I looked at Miguel with a confused look on my face as he knelt on one knee with an engagement ring box in his hand. "What are you doing?" I asked. "Hi, my name is Kelly, and I've got a crazy story to tell. But first, like and subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to hit that notification bell too." My mother, Laura McCline, introduced me to Miguel when I was just about 10 years old. We had recently moved because she got a new job. She wasn't keen on leaving me alone, so she hired a babysitter. He was 18 at the time and came highly recommended from wealthy people in our neighborhood. Being an only child, I never saw Miguel as a babysitter, but as an older brother. The older I got, the more comfortable I got with discussing topics that I never would with my mom. For example, boys. And I also developed a sort of crush on Miguel as well, which I kept well covered for fear that my mom would fire him. Even though Miguel and I built a great relationship over the years, I never heard him speak about his family or any friends. I didn't even know where he lived. When my 16th birthday rolled around, my mother told me that I didn't need a babysitter anymore. Miguel and I stayed in touch for a while, then we went off the grid for a few years. When I was around 21 years of age, I got a phone call. My heart skipped a beat when I realized it was Miguel. We chatted for a few hours. Then he asked if he could see me the next day, and I agreed. When Miguel came to the house the next day, my mother had already left for work. We had a few drinks, and I cooked lunch as we caught up with each other's lives. Then something happened that left me speechless. I watched as Miguel got down on one knee and asked me to marry him. I looked down at Miguel with a confused look on my face as he knelt on one knee with an engagement ring box in his hand. "What are you doing?" I asked. "I'm asking you to marry me," he said seriously. I thought that he was joking at first, but the tone of his voice sounded strange. "But didn't you just tell me that you had a girlfriend and she was pregnant?" This was what shocked me even more. We had just been talking about his girlfriend, and he had seemed so happy and in love with her. I hadn't expected him to just cast her aside like that. Miguel sank to the floor, defeated, and placed his head in his hands. I sat beside him and said nothing, as I waited for him to open up and tell me what was really going on. Eventually, he turned to me and said, "This was my girlfriend's idea." I bit my lip in an attempt to be quiet until he finished talking. He continued, "I'm in the country illegally, but if I marry someone from here, then it would buy me more time." I was extremely confused at this point. Why don't you just marry Melissa? After all, she's your girlfriend. Melissa is still married. Her divorce will take too long to finalize, Miguel said sadly. It's not that I didn't believe Miguel, but I needed to call Melissa up to find out how she felt about this entire thing. I got her number from Miguel and invited her over. After she confirmed everything Miguel said, she continued, "I don't have any friends that I trust to do this. And when Miguel spoke about you, he said he would trust you with his life, and he was willing to take that risk. I trust his judgment." "This is the only option that I have," Miguel said, his eyes pleading with mine. "I don't want to be away when my daughter is born." Melissa chimed in. "His mother's also willing to pay you $100,000 to marry her son. If you decide to marry him, it is just to keep him in the country. I will do the rest." She winked at Miguel, and he blushed. I couldn't imagine my life without Miguel. It had been 11 years since he came into my life and made it better. The past few years without him, I felt like a fish out of water. I was happy to help him and his little family. The next day, unbeknown to my mother, Miguel and I went to the courthouse with our 2 witnesses, Melissa and one of Miguel's coworkers, Brian. As soon as we stepped outside the courthouse, Melissa went to the car and brought out a briefcase. "Here you go," she said as she opened the case. $100,000 delivered as promised. She closed the case and handed it to me. I took it and handed over my wedding band and the marriage certificate. A few days later, my mom took me to dinner. My eyes locked with a guy, and I felt my heart flutter. He looked a few years older than me. It looked as though he was also having dinner with his family. Throughout dinner, he made these cute, funny faces, and I would giggle. When my mother and I were about to leave the restaurant, he approached us. "Good evening, ladies." He smiled at us. Then he turned to my mother and continued, "I would like to ask your daughter on a date, if it's okay with you." By this time, I was red as a cherry, and it took my mother her sweet time to say yes. "I'll be outside if you need me." My mother winked at me. I placed my hand on my face, embarrassed by my mother's antics. He introduced himself as Jet, and we exchanged numbers. Later that night, Jet sent me a message and asked if it was okay for him to call me. I said yes, and it was the beginning of a beautiful relationship. Throughout the year that Jet and I dated, I never told him about my marriage with Miguel, although I did introduce Miguel and Melissa to him. Melissa seemed relieved that I had a boyfriend. I guess it made her feel secure that I wasn't trying to steal Miguel from her. Jet and I were even invited to the christening after their baby was born. Melissa gave birth to a beautiful baby girl named Ava Grace. One night, just as I was about to snuggle into my bed after a long day, I got a call from Miguel. He never called me this late. "Hi, Miguel. Is everything okay?" I asked worriedly. I heard him sigh heavily over the phone. "Can I see you?" he asked. "Now?" I looked at my clock and it was 10 p.m. "If it's not a problem." "Sure, no problem. I'll be there in 20 minutes. And he hung up. I got up and got ready quickly and waited outside for him. I didn't want my mother to wake up and give me the 100-question scenario. Miguel pulled up and I jumped in. The silence in the car was deafening. We pulled up at Miguel's place. "Would Melissa be okay with me coming over at this hour?" I asked with a raised eyebrow. "She and Ava Grace went to her mother's for the weekend. It's all good," he said as he hopped out of the car. I followed Miguel inside. For the first hour or so, we ate snacks and watched movies, but at the back of my mind, I wanted to know why Miguel wanted to see me in the first place. I cleared my throat. Miguel, is there something you wanted to talk?" I watched as Miguel walked into the bedroom and came back out with his phone. He handed me the phone without saying a word. I took the phone and pressed play on the video that was on the screen. My mouth dropped when I recognized Melissa and Brian, Miguel's coworker, dancing and kissing in a club. "Miguel, I'm so sorry." I threw my hands around his neck and pulled him close. Miguel relaxed into my arms, and we just held each other for a few minutes. "So what are you going to do now?" I asked as I slowly moved out of his grasp to look into his eyes. "Well, when I found out, I took Ava Grace for a paternity test without Melissa knowing. I got back the results earlier today, and I found out that Ava Grace isn't mine. I confronted Melissa, and she confessed that she wasn't sure. She moved out today and went to stay with her mother," he said, and he shrugged his shoulders. The hurt in Miguel's voice was almost unbearable. I didn't know how to comfort him or help him deal with this sudden change in his life. "What can I do to make it better?" I asked. "Can you stay the night?" Miguel asked. I agreed to spend the night with Miguel. I texted Jet and told him that I had a long day and I would probably sleep in the next day. I also messaged my mother and told her that I was spending the night at Jet's house, so she wouldn't be worried when she woke up the next day and didn't see me. I didn't tell her that it was actually Miguel I was staying with, in case she started worrying about Miguel. Over the next few weeks, Miguel and I spent a lot of time together. I even blew off a few dates with Jet to spend time with Miguel. I told Jet that I had a lot of work to do, and he wasn't pleased because he knew I was a workaholic and had my moments. One night while out at dinner with Jet, a wave of nausea came to me. "Kelly, are you okay?" Jet asked in a concerned voice. "I'm okay." I smiled weakly. Jet called the waiter and asked for the bill. I excused myself and told him that I needed to go to the bathroom. As soon as I stood up, a wave of dizziness came over me, and I felt my knees buckle. Jet caught me just before I hit the ground. He scooped me up like a baby and held me close. I heard him tell the waiter that he was going to take me to the car and come back and pay the bill. When we got to the car, Jet made sure that I was secure before rushing back into the restaurant. I kept my eyes closed for the entire trip home as Jet gently caressed my hand during the ride. We went back to his place. He got me ready for bed and then tucked me in. I fell asleep the instant my head hit the pillow. The next day, Jet insisted that I go to the doctor, so we went. To his surprise, and my dismay, the doctor said that, yep, you guessed it, I was pregnant. After the doctor's office, Jet took me to a little cafe to get breakfast. "Please, don't tell my mom yet," I pleaded. "I want to tell her when the time is right." Jet nodded in agreement. I watched as he removed a small black velvet box from his jacket. "I've been carrying around this box for months trying to figure out the right time to do this," he said. He stood up and walked over to my side of the table, and he knelt in front of me. A small "aww" escaped the lips of the few customers and employees in the cafe. He took my hand and looked into my eyes. "Kelly, will you marry me?" I looked around the cafe at the hopeful faces, then down at Jet. I forced a smile and nodded as he slipped the ring on my finger. An applause rose from the cafe, and a look of victory on Jet's face was somewhat amusing. All I could think on the ride back to my house was how I was going to tell Jet I was already married. My mother was excited when we announced our engagement. She went straight into preparation mode, even though Jet and I had not even set a date for the wedding yet. I excused myself and left Jet and my mother talking excitedly. I went to my room and messaged Miguel. I told him that I needed to see him urgently. That night I snuck out and met Miguel. I told him about the events that took place that day. He listened attentively, and when I finished, he looked at me. "So what do you want to do? Do you want to get married to Jet?" he asked. "I know. I don't want to raise this baby on my own," I cried. Miguel looked at me as though he was about to say something, but decided against it. He told me that whatever I decided to do, that he would support me. The next 3 months were very hectic, as I decided that I would get married to Jet before I began to show. I didn't dissolve my marriage with Miguel because he still did not have citizenship in the country, and I did not want to jeopardize that for him. I did, however, invite Miguel to the wedding. That morning, I was more sick than I had ever been. My mother thought it was just my nerves, since I didn't tell her about the pregnancy yet. I was finally ready to walk down the aisle. I took my uncle's arm and looked around the church for Miguel's familiar face, but it was nowhere to be seen. I couldn't help but feel somehow hurt. During the ceremony, there was a commotion outside the church. A few seconds later, Miguel burst in through the front doors of the church. "Jet!" he shouted angrily. "Don't you have something to tell Kelly?" "Miguel, what are you doing?" I asked frantically. Just then, a woman and 2 children walked into the church. I recognized her as one of the ladies that sat with Jet at the restaurant the first night we met. "Jet, why don't you introduce Kelly to your wife of 6 years?" Before I could react, my mother was at my side and slapped Jet squarely in the face. "Your business here is done," she said angrily. "I think your wife is calling you." Jet walked away and walked straight past the woman and children without saying a word. I couldn't believe it. Jet was already married, and he hadn't told me. I mean, I suppose I'd done the same to him, but still. My mother apologized to the guests and told them that they were more than happy to stay for the food and drinks since they were already paid for. Everyone cleared out of the church, and my mother left Miguel and I to talk. "Thank you," I said. "Anything for the woman that I love," he said and leaned in to kiss me. I was shocked. Miguel was actually kissing me. We pulled apart, and I said, I think it's time to tell my mom about our marriage. Miguel held my hand and said, "Let's go. No matter the outcome, just know that I will always have your back." I gave birth to a baby girl that year. Her name is Isabella, and she's now 5 years old. I was a bit disappointed when the paternity test came back, and Miguel was not the father, but that didn't stop him from loving Isabella with all his heart. We are currently expecting a boy soon, to complete our little family. If I had to sum up my experience, I would say that love truly conquers all.
Hey, Peekaboo! Have your bath quickly before someone comes.
We had our bath and dried ourselves as fast as we could before running out of the restaurant. Once we got to a safe zone, we started laughing, so happy that we hadn't been caught this time. The last time was so embarrassing. The security man didn't even let us finish up. Thankfully, he had the courtesy to call a female security officer who was even more ruthless than he was. We were forced to put our clothes back on despite the fact that our bodies were still filled with soap. We bowed our heads as we were dragged out of the restaurant, our faces still covered in soap lather. After that, we avoided taking baths for a couple of weeks till today. "We smell so fresh," I giggled. This was our life now, sleeping under egg cartons and sneaking into neat restaurants when no one was looking to have our baths. It wasn't always like this, though. We used to be quite comfortable. My dad was a lawyer, and his company rewarded him greatly. Unfortunately, he was hit by a stroke and we lost him. My mother couldn't pay for our house and our survival with the tiny revenue we got from her shop, and just like that, we started sleeping in my mom's shop. But when her landlord noticed this, he sent her packing also. We had no option but to move to the streets after trying the shelters and figuring out that they were all filled up.
Earth to Peekaboo!
My mom said, releasing me from my sad thoughts.
Guess what?
She asked. What? I asked, rubbing my bare foot on the tarred floor.
I got a real job! Ah!
We both screamed and jumped around.
But that's not even all.
There's more?
Yes, there's more.
Well, don't keep me waiting. What is it? I squealed.
This job comes with free accommodation. Ah!
We squealed again. Can we leave now?
Immediately.
My mom squealed. I packed the little I had, which was almost nothing, and followed my mother, kissing the egg carton that had kept me warm for a year goodbye. As we ran off, I noticed that some homeless people there were giving us the bad eye. They were obviously not happy that our lives had become better. I felt bad for them, but we obviously couldn't take them along with us. I waved at them, but no one waved back. I tried waving again, but my mother dragged me off. We got to our new quarters, and there were just 2 tiny beds in the room. It was more than comfortable for us. Better than sleeping on the hard street floor. Mom resumed her cleaning duties at the law firm that employed her the next day, while I stayed at home because I couldn't go to school. I spent my days reading all the books that I could lay my hands on in the library, and sometimes I helped my mother with her cleaning work. This was our life for 4 years until one day, when my mom mistakenly bumped into a lawyer while cleaning.
I'm so sorry, sir.
The man turned towards her angrily. Her dirty cleaning water had stained his white trousers. Once he looked at her face, his expression turned to surprise and then back to anger.
Mrs. Peekaboo?
I'm sorry, sir. Do I know you?
Do you know me?
He laughed.
Where's your daughter, Peekaboo Jr.?
Me! I ran towards him and he lifted me up. Mr. Samaritan! I remembered, hugging him.
Wow, you've grown so big, P. Jr. How old are you now?
10. My mother's eyes widened when she finally recognized him.
Oh my God, Mr. Samaritan!
He hugged her too and she burst into tears. Mr. Samaritan was one of Dad's oldest friends. He had an accident around the same time my dad suffered the stroke attack, so he was admitted and out of it during the burial. When we started living on the streets, we sold all our gadgets to survive and no one could contact us anymore.
Can you tell me why you're cleaning floors?
He asked my mom angrily. My mom just shook her head, tears streaming down her face.
Didn't your husband leave you anything? Pack you and PJ Jr.'s bags immediately and follow me. You know what? Just leave them. Leave them where they are. I'll have them thrown out. Follow me.
If you think anything is going to happen between Mr. Samaritan and my mom, tell us in the comments below. Like and subscribe if you are enjoying the story so far.
What about my boss? I have to resign respectfully.
He is my friend. I'll talk to him and thank him for his help. Don't worry about that.
Mr. Samaritan literally dragged us into his limo. He gave my mom a job in his company and a house in his workers' quarters.
I was also enrolled in a great school immediately, and somehow I was able to catch up to my grade mates because I'd been reading so much. It turned out that Mr. Samaritan's wife had also died a few years ago due to some kind of heart disease, and this was around the same time that my father died. My mom and Mr. Samaritan had similar experiences, so they had a lot to bond over, and sooner rather than later, they fell in love and got married. When it was time for their honeymoon, I was told that it was my duty to babysit my new stepsister, Happy. Happy never liked me, no matter how hard I tried. I decided to stop trying, and we just never spoke anymore. I was freaked out that they expected me to babysit that nuisance, so in secret, I decided to hire a nanny that would do the babysitting for me once my parents were gone. Somehow, though, my mom figured out what I was up to and stopped me. She explained that this was my time to bond with Happy, and I should make good use of it because Happy would be my sister forever. Although the thought of having Happy as a sister forever brought chills down my spine, I decided to give it a shot. Maybe she wasn't that bad after all. I was wrong. She was the worst. Do you know what this human did? She cut her own hair and burnt all her clothes. She set the house on fire and broke her own nose. News got to my mom and my stepdad, so they had to cancel the honeymoon and rush back home immediately. I explained that I didn't even touch Happy for a second, but Happy kept screaming that I was the evil witch who burned down her closet, cut her hair while she was sleeping, and broke her nose because she refused to give me her allowance. What? Mr. Samaritan took my side and said he believed me. He knew his daughter well enough to know when she was just throwing a tantrum. He angrily made the decision to send Happy to boarding school for being such a nuisance, but I pleaded for her and he accepted. I guess this made Happy feel guilty because she started being kind to me and somehow we became friends. We all lived happily for 2 years until things started changing. My school went for an excursion in Paris. While we were walking on the road, I thought I saw my dad for a second, but I knew that it wasn't possible. When we entered the art gallery, I saw him again, clear as day. So I walked up to him and tugged on his shirt a little. Dad? I saw how the expressions changed on his face. From recognition to pain, to utter disbelief to anger, and then to pretense. I knew he was my dad, and I knew I recognized him. I may have been just 12, but I definitely wasn't stupid.
I'm sorry, but I think you may be mistaking me for someone else, kiddo. I'm not your dad.
He quickly walked off, but not before I took some pictures of him with my camera. Kiddo. I tried figuring out why that word gave me goosebumps. It reminded me of my dad. Only my dad called me kiddo. It was him. He was alive. I left the excursion and followed him into an alleyway where he started arguing with a strange woman in French. Click, click. I took more photos of them, but they noticed me and started chasing me. I ran straight into some thugs, and the thugs tried to kidnap me, but my dad quickly saved me by beating them up as I ran away. When I got to the art studio, they were already leaving. I ran towards the school bus, and luckily the people on the street noticed me and started shouting for the bus to stop. Seeing that I was screaming and running towards it, the bus stopped and I was glad that I was safe. As I looked at the road from the back of the bus, I saw my dad standing and staring at me. I waved goodbye and he waved back before turning and walking away. When I got home, I didn't tell anyone what happened to Paris. A couple of weeks later, Mr. Samaritan's supposedly dead wife walked right through the front door and announced,
"I'm back."
She was surprised to see me and my mother in the house, so she asked,
"Who are you? And what are you doing in my house?"
before fainting. We called our family doctor to examine her, and he said that she was perfectly fine. When she woke up, she claimed that she had amnesia and couldn't remember anything that had happened for the past 7 years after her supposed death. My mom, who was unnecessarily kind, decided to let their former Mrs. Samaritan stay in the same house with us. I warned her, explaining that this was a bad idea, but she simply shunned me, telling me to think less about myself sometimes and more of other people, like my stepsister Happy. Happy was elated when she realized that her mother was alive after all. I agreed to let her mother stay with us when I saw how happy it made her. One day at dinner, the sad topic of my dead dad came up. My stepdad talked about how great my dad was. According to him, my dad was selfless, resourceful, kind-hearted, and the best man he ever encountered. This made his former wife burst into laughter.
Excuse me, I'm so sorry. I just remembered something funny. So sorry for interrupting. I'll just be in my room upstairs. Happy's mother's reaction to her ex-husband praising my dad was questionable, so I finally decided to tell my parents about what happened in Paris. I went to my secret spot in my room to get my camera, but to my surprise, it was empty. My camera had been stolen. I knew exactly who was responsible for this. Before I could confront her, my room door opened and she walked in.
Oh, what are you looking for, sweetie?
You know exactly what I'm looking for because you took it. Where's my camera? She just laughed. That's why you came here, isn't it? My dad sent you to get rid of the pictures? Why? Why did you both fake your deaths and disappear, leaving your children and partners behind? Why?
Because we were in love, you fool. And everything was fine until you came to Paris and saw us, spoiling everything. I should have you beaten right now,
She said as she came closer to me. What about Happy? What about me?
Who cares about you two? One parent was enough. Whatever. I've gotten what I came for, so I can leave,
She said as she bounced towards the door. To her surprise, immediately she opened the door, my mom gave her a terrible slap, subsequently jumping on her, making them get into a scuffle. Happy just stood there crying. Mr. Samaritan managed to separate the two women. He made his ex-wife sign divorce papers to make his marriage to my mother legal. Seeing how angry everyone was, she signed the papers. After this, he sent her out of the house and told her to never return. We were all saddened by the realization. Everyone was visibly hurt. Neither my dad nor Happy's mother died. They both faked their death and ran away together. She left her husband, who loved her so much, and her newborn daughter Happy all alone. She didn't even care till this very day. My dad's actions were much worse. All this time we were suffering, living on the streets, eating scraps, cleaning after other people, and he was living his best life in Paris. He didn't bother leaving anything for us before he eloped. He just left, not caring about how we'd survive. We all sat at the dining table, lost in thought. Me and Happy's eyes locked for a second, and it was like we were thinking the same thing. What did we do to deserve such hate and hurt?
I think we should watch a movie.
Mr. Samaritan suggested, and we all agreed. He played The Fault in Our Stars, and we watched it while eating popcorn, pizza, and ice cream. We cried profusely, but deep down we knew that we weren't crying because of the movie. We were just letting the hurt out. A few days later, we got a mail package from Paris. It contained 3 letters of apology written by my dad. One for Mr. Samaritan, one for Mom, and one for me. Attached to me and Mom's letters were checks of $500 million each. Hearing from him made me cry even more. After some time, we were finally able to get over the pain, realizing that we didn't need these people anymore. They'd not been a part of our lives for 7 whole years, and we'd been happy. We had a new family now, and we loved each other more than anything else in the world. The experience brought our family together. Happy and I got closer, and the love bond between Mr. Samaritan and my mom grew stronger. Remember that you are worthy of love. It doesn't matter what you've gone through or who has hurt you in the past. You can still find love, happiness, and friendship again. Please like this video if you enjoyed it, subscribe to our channel, turn on post notifications, and tell us if you've ever been hurt by someone you loved in the past, including how you got over it. You might be helping a random stranger out. See you in our next video. Bye.
Ew, Frank, why are you wearing that hideous outfit? I looked at Frank in disbelief.
That hideous thing is the school uniform. You should be wearing yours. Principal Hudson has already written me 3 warning letters.
Mom passed behind us with a basket of laundry. Well, he's gonna have to write a 4th because I wouldn't be caught dead in that. I went to grab an apple from the fruit basket on the kitchen counter, and then I noticed a tray of cupcakes. Whose cupcakes are these? My eyes sparkled.
Oh, Nikita dropped that off while you were in the shower for your birthday.
But my birthday isn't until next week.
Well, think of it as an early birthday present.
Sweet. I scooped up one of the cupcakes, bit into it, and told Mom that I was leaving for school. I strolled out of the house and met Nikita, my best friend, by the mailbox. Hey, Nikita, thanks for the cupcakes.
What cupcakes? I didn't send any cupcakes.
Nikita, are you playing with me?
No, I'm not. I didn't send you anything.
The cupcake fell from my hand as I doubled over from a wave of nausea. Hi, my name is Felicity. Please like and subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to smash that notification bell so you can know when more amazing stories are out. Mom, it wasn't my fault that he ran into my fists. Maybe his parents should get his eyes tested. I folded my arms and smirked.
Felicity, you have to stop this. I can't keep taking time off from work to pick you up at school.
Then don't. I never asked you to. I watched as the large vein on the side of Mom's head thronged. Through gritted teeth, she warned,
The next time I hear anything negative about your behavior, we are moving you to another school with stricter protocol.
Yeah, whatever. I slid my headphones over my ears and went to my room. Mom and Dad never saw me when I was getting straight A's or bringing home trophies from the science fair. They never had enough time because they were always working, and many times, Frank, my younger brother, ate dinner alone. Now, at least one of our parents is home at least 3 times a week. So really, I'm doing whatever needs to be done for the greater good. And besides, it's fun, so why not? Mom would always warn me about changing schools or sending me to boot camp, but Mom was a softie, all bark and no bite. I continued hanging out with my friends and doing the things we were accustomed to doing. One afternoon, my gang and a rival gang faced off in the parking lot at the mall. Even though I was skeptical that Mom would move me if she heard anything, something in me snapped when I saw someone taking the fight from behind a car. I bolted behind the person, but I couldn't keep up and lost them around the corner that led to the crowded street market. By the time I got home, the fight gave over 100,000 views, and Mom, Dad, and Frank were packing. Where are you guys going? I looked at Dad and then Mom.
Mom warned you, but you didn't listen, so thanks to you, we're all moving to Crystal Falls Community. Thanks, Felicity.
Frank snapped. What? We can't move. All my friends are here. I have 1 more year of high school.
And maybe that's the problem.
Dad replied gently.
Maybe you need new friends. Friends that actually care about you and your future.
Yeah, well, I'm not going, I screamed. I ran to my room and I slammed the door. There is absolutely no way I'm leaving my home to go live in some creepy gated community. I mumbled as I locked my bedroom door, put on the radio on full volume, and fell into bed. When I opened my eyes, the radio was off, my bedroom door was removed, and my mom was packed up.
Oh, it's nice of you to join us. The moving van will be here in 1 hour.
Mom walked in a few seconds later.
You can leave here kicking and screaming, or you can get your butt in the car quietly when the time comes. Either way, you brought this on yourself. Welcome to your consequences.
Without another word, Mom left, and within the hour, my family and I had moved from the only home Frank and I had ever known. After a few hours, we arrived at the community. It was guarded, and Mom was given a rule book upon entering. The rules that you need to take note of is, number 1, no one is allowed to leave the community. Number 2, all adults worked within the community. And number 3, everything was rationed. Families that kept to the rules got more than families who struggled to control their children. Within our first 2 weeks in the gated community, I did and said every and anything that would let my parents know that I didn't want to be there. Frank, on the other hand, fitted like a glove within the community. It was my 3rd fight when I was called into the principal's office. I sat outside the office and waited to be called in. A few minutes later, my parents arrived. The look of disappointment on their faces didn't faze me. They were called into the office and exited about 15 minutes later.
We'll talk about this when you get home.
Dad ushered me to the door. But when we got home, I was sent to my room while my parents argued downstairs. I would do everything I could to get kicked out of Crystal Falls. I heard a knock on the door and Mom and Dad entered and sat next to me on my bed. Dad rubbed his temples before he began.
Felicity, your mom and I have made the decision to move because you're going down a path that you may not be able to recover from. We're just trying to help you.
Help me how? By leaving everyone I know behind? I didn't even get to tell my friends goodbye.
Felicity, Crystal Falls is not like the life you knew before. Everything that you do here affects all of us as a family. Can't you see that?
Mom's voice sounded strained. Dad looked at me and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear.
The principal says you have a lot of potential. You were a great student, Felicity, so I know you can do it.
I smiled at Dad. But when I was a straight-A student, you and Mom ignored me. Now, I got up and walked to the other side of the room. You guys are paying attention to me.
So all this is some sort of attention-seeking gimmick?
You and Dad always talk about choices and consequences, but at what point do you and Dad sit and think about the choices you've made and how they affected our family? Well, Mom, Crystal Falls is your consequence for being a horrible mother. Mom gasped. She looked as though she was about to say something but changed her mind. She shook her head and left my room. Dad stood up.
Crystal Falls is our home now. We can either build each other up or tear each other down. Decide what kind of link you are going to be.
Dad walked out and closed the door behind him. Over the next few months, I still didn't make any friends because I wasn't planning on staying in Crystal Falls, and my behavior regressed greatly. I was even put in solitary for 1 week without seeing my family. That just made me determined to find a way out of the community. I needed to be around real people with real emotions. I felt as though people within the community lost a bit of themselves because they were forced to be something they weren't. The problem was, there was only one way in and out of Crystal Falls, and it was heavily guarded. One afternoon, while heading home from school, I took a detour to observe the guards. If I could get an idea of how they did their rotations, then maybe I could escape.
You know it's useless.
A female voice came from behind me. I spun around. I have no idea what you're talking about.
Oh, really?
The girl smiled and looked at me.
So you're not trying to time the guards so you can escape?
No, I wasn't. I turned and headed off in the direction of home.
Hi, my name is Nikita, and yours is Felicity, correct? We're in the same class.
Hi, it's nice to meet you.
Listen, this place is not as bad as it seems.
She fell into step next to me.
You just need to know the right people. And besides, the last time I tried to escape, I got a month in solitary.
We walked in silence until I got to the front of my house.
Listen, if you want me to show you the ropes, we can walk to school together tomorrow and I'll help you.
Sure, no problem. See you tomorrow at about 7:30? Nikita nodded in agreement before walking off and I headed inside. Next morning when I stepped outside, Nikita and Frank were whispering. When Frank saw me, he walked away. What was that all about? I looked at Nikita suspiciously. She waved a few papers in her hand.
Just collecting my math homework. I told you there's a way to survive here.
She winked at me. Over the next few weeks, Nikita and I became best friends. She told me that there was no reason to stop being who I was. I just needed to take it to make the adults happy. When adults are happy, they tend to leave you alone. Nikita introduced me to other children who were also forced to be in the community. Anything we wanted, including alcohol, we were able to get it as our supplies came from a guard. I just needed to make it through the next year and a half. Once I hit 18, I'd leave the community and never look back. So Nikita was right. Once I got my grades up and adjusted my attitude, my parents left me alone. I still refused to wear the school uniform, remove my tattoos and piercings, as well as dye my hair. My parents were just happy I wasn't getting into trouble anymore. They were finally willing to overlook those physical features. With my 17th birthday around the corner, I couldn't wait to see what Nikita and the gang had in store for me. About a week before my birthday, things got a bit weird. After I took the cupcake and met Nikita, I doubled over with nausea. The last thing I remember was Nikita calling out for help before I blacked out. When I woke up, I was at home in my bedroom. I sat up slowly since I still felt a bit woozy. I placed my feet on the ground and stood up slowly. I felt strange, maybe different. I went to my mirror, but I couldn't tell what it was. I picked up my school uniform and got dressed quickly since I didn't want to be late for school. I greeted my parents and Frank when I entered the kitchen.
Good morning, Felicity. Sleep well?
Mom smiled as she prepared breakfast. I feel a bit woozy. Maybe I'm coming down with the flu.
Let me get you the vitamins.
Frank stood up and disappeared for a few seconds and returned with a bottle of vitamins.
Take this and you'll be okay.
Frank opened the bottle and handed me a vitamin, which I swallowed with some orange juice. Thanks. I've gotta go, Frank. I'll see you in school. Mom and Dad, I'll see you when I get home. Have a great day. I kissed my parents and exited the house. Over the next few days, Nikita tried to speak with me, but I just wasn't interested. I had new friends and was in a few after-school clubs. One afternoon, she cornered me in the girls' bathroom.
What's going on? Why are you ignoring me? You've been taking the vitamins, haven't you?
And so what?
Don't you realize it's changing who you are? Where are your tattoos? And didn't you say you'll never wear the uniform, but yet still you are?
What are you talking about? What tattoos? Nikita looked around before removing a cell phone from her skirt pocket and showing me some pictures of the both of us when I had tattoos, piercings, and colored hair. That doesn't mean anything. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to get back to class. But as I walked to class, I couldn't help but feel as though what Nikita said was true. Were my parents really controlling me by feeding me pills? That afternoon when I got home, I went straight to Frank's room and knocked on the door.
Come in.
I found Frank sitting by his desk and doing homework. Hey Frank, can I ask you something? It may be a sort of a weird question. I nervously played with my hands. He turned to look at me.
Sure, no problem.
Are mom and dad giving you vitamins as well?
No, they don't need to. I'm not the rebellious child.
Noticing the confused look on my face, Frank made a confession.
I was tired of being associated with you in the outside world. Nobody knew my name. All they knew me as was Felicity's brother. I was the one who taped the fight, uploaded it to social media, and showed it to mom and dad. All I ever wanted was a normal life, and I could get that here without you messing it up.
So Nikita was right, I mumbled.
About Nikita, well, she's the principal's daughter. She befriends the oddball kids like yourself and gives out her famous cupcakes. With the help of the pill, you wouldn't remember anything from your rebellious lifestyle.
It took me a few seconds to process that information. Nikita had betrayed me. But why would they do this to me?
The same reason you decided to rebel against them. Because they can. Look, I have to get back to homework. I have a big test tomorrow.
Frank turned back to his work and I left his room and headed to my own. I didn't believe that Nikita was in on this. I wrote her a letter about everything Frank had told me and asked her if she could help to reverse it. If I stopped remembering who I was, then Nikita and I were friends. I didn't want to turn into someone I didn't know. All I ever wanted was to be me.
Hi, I'm Raven, and... Ah! Raven, help me! My eyes are on fire! That's my sister. I told you not to play with the soap, Regina! I'm only 9 years old, but my baby sister makes me feel like her parent, since she's always getting herself into trouble. And if I don't help her, then who will? Since mom is always so busy.
Raven? Regina, you're going to be late for school.
Let me introduce myself properly. I am Raven, and I am from New York. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. Now, back to my story. Growing up, I learned to be the responsible big sister. Regina is 3 years younger than me, and we both live with our mom, who works extremely hard as a real estate agent. Besides mom being busy, Regina has always been such a difficult child.
Mommy, my clothes are all messed up.
Oh, Regina, why can't you be more responsible like your sister? The bus will be here any moment now. Raven, please help.
I didn't mind helping mom out with my sister, but as I helped her change into a clean t-shirt, she suddenly bit my hand. Ow! Regina, why did you do that?
Oh, I'm sorry, Raven. I didn't mean to bite you. I was feeling a little hungry and it just happened. Is that a bus I hear? Hurry up, Raven. We're going to be late.
At school, I was a top student and a role model to all my classmates.
Well done once again to Raven, who scored full marks on the test. Everyone else failed.
Oh, aren't you so perfect? Geek.
Oh, don't sulk too much. You might just melt and turn exactly into your result, which is a big, fat 0. Kids were jealous of me all the time, but I never focused on that much. I stuck to my goals and enjoyed the results. Mom would be so proud. And when I was around 16 and showed Mom my top achievement award, Regina suddenly screamed, "Ah!"
What's wrong? What happened?
Oh, I thought I saw a rat or maybe a snake, but it's just my eyes playing games. What's for dinner? I'm hungry.
Can I see your report card?
Regina's report card looked like a hot dookie, and Mom was not very pleased when she saw her results.
You failed! Again?
I'll try harder next term.
I never see you studying. You are always watching TV or playing video games. From now onwards, you will study with your sister.
I was so surprised by what Regina did next. She got up and toppled the table and chairs upside down with so much rage.
I'm so sick and tired of you and your perfect daughter, Raven. I'm not Raven, Mom.
After Regina left the kitchen like a beast, Mom started crying, and I comforted her. And then later that evening, when we sat down for dinner, Mom had something important to tell us.
The summer holidays are coming up, but unfortunately my boss needs me to attend some urgent business in Chicago.
So are we getting a sitter?
No, I have no choice but to send you to your Aunt Maggie's house.
Aunt Maggie's, yay!
I, however, was not happy in the least, Aunt Maggie was just like Regina, a ruthless devil. When we arrived at Aunt Maggie's house, she was already waiting on the porch. Regina got out of the car and ran to her like she was just freed from prison, and Aunt Maggie caught her with her arms wide open.
Auntie Maggie, I missed you.
I have missed you as well, my Regina Boo. Look how much you have grown. Come on in, you must be thirsty.
Mom and I were left standing outside to carry in all the bags. As we entered the living room, it was like walking through a freaking kaleidoscope. All the bright colors almost blinded me for a moment. Aunt Maggie was helping Mom with our bags.
Thank you for taking care of the girls. You can handle this, right?
Aunt Maggie ignored Mom's question and rushed toward the kitchen because there was a loud crashing sound.
Maggie, are you sure you can handle this?
Relax, sis, I can. Enjoy your holiday.
Okay, bye, girls. Please behave.
The next day, Aunt Maggie wanted to take us out for an early lunch, but I wasn't feeling so well.
Raven, we're starving. Hurry up.
It's fine. Go on without me. I decided to stay in bed the whole day, hoping to feel better. And then there was this loud rattling sound. Being alone never scared me, but suddenly I felt a chill. And when I tried to fall asleep, bang! There was that sound again. Aunt Maggie? Regina? Is that you? Regina, you can cut it out now. You have my attention. Secretly, I hoped that it was Regina and her attention-seeking nature, but it was not. I slowly got up from under the blankets and bravely went to face whatever it was. Hello? Anyone there? When the noise stopped, I relaxed a little. But when I looked inside my aunt's room, something was in there, shuffling around, and I raced back to my room. I stayed under my blanket with the torch on for hours. It was night now, and Aunt Maggie and Regina weren't back yet. But I was dog-tired, and my eyelids felt like lead, so I let myself fall asleep. The next morning, I woke up startled as Aunt Maggie started shouting from the kitchen.
Regina, Raven, come on, sleepyheads, breakfast is served.
I didn't hear you come in last night.
I'm sorry, Raven, I had some car trouble. How are you feeling? Did you sleep well?
I decided I needed to just come out with it and tell Aunt Maggie what I thought. I think there is a ghost in your room, Aunt Maggie. Aunt Maggie and Regina burst out into hysterical laughter. I felt like a fool for saying what I thought.
That's the most funniest thing.
Jinx, you owe me a soda.
Raven, there are no ghosts here. I scared them all away when I moved back in after my carnival days. Oh, and that reminds me, we're going out tonight to the carnival! And I am going to throw in a corn dog with that soda, Regina Boo.
Woohoo! Since no one believed me about the ghost, I was going to stock up on torch batteries. There was no way I was going to fall asleep in this house without my torch.
All right, now let's talk about what we're wearing tonight. This is what I'll be wearing, and I have matching outfits for you both. How exciting!
There was no way Regina or I was ever going to wear duck costumes to a carnival, so I came up with an excuse for the both of us. Regina and I have, severe skin allergies, so I don't think that's the brightest idea.
Okay then, more fun for me then.
It felt good to be out and about, but Aunt Maggie was so into her ducks that she spoke about them all the way to the carnival.
All right, girls, my duck show is about to begin. I need to get to the ducks. I saved you front row seats.
Thanks, Aunt Maggie, but I would rather go on some carnival rides.
All right, you can go. But only if you promise to stick with your sister.
Great. Now I felt like one of Aunt Maggie's ducks. Yes, Aunt Maggie, I promise. Then, Aunt Maggie handed Regina some money, and Regina made a mad dash toward the carnival rides. And then, all of a sudden, I couldn't see her. Regina! Regina! Where are you? When I spotted her, she was heading toward the lake with a boy! Was this Regina's plan all along? To ditch me for a boy? I called out to Regina, but she just ignored me and got into a boat with this boy. When I got down to where the boats were docked, I got into one and rowed frantically. And when I caught up to them, I shouted to Regina, Regina, get into my boat now! We are heading back to shore!
Not a chance, fart face.
I am so going to wring your neck after this! You selfish brat! Suddenly, their boat was hit by something, and then again. The second time made the boat topple over, and Regina and the boy went in the water. Then, I saw it. It was a crocodile, and it was heading for Regina. The stupid boy she was with just left her. Regina, grab onto the paddle! We got onto shore safely, and then Regina got out of the boat and bolted toward that very same boy.
How could you just leave me to be eaten by a crocodile, you jerk?
As she was arguing with her boyfriend she met 15 minutes ago, this other girl shoved Regina.
Hey, why are you yelling at my brother? You freakazoid?
Your brother left my sister to be eaten by crocodiles!
My dad is the chief sheriff of this town, and if he finds out that you two newbies are trouble, we'll deport you back from whichever monkey land you came from.
Well, looks like you and your brother are the biggest monkeys of this town. With that, I took Regina's hand and walked off. Later that night, while I was in the room watching Storytime Animated, Regina sat down quietly next to me.
Thank you for standing up for me like that.
I've always stood up for you, Regina, but you just never notice, since you're always so angry at me and Mom.
You're better than me at everything, so I just hated myself for not being like you.
Regina, there are so many beautiful things about you, and you have to love yourself first, and then you'll see the difference. While Regina and I were having a moment of sisterhood, Aunt Maggie came barging into the room.
What you girls did tonight was not funny.
We never said that it was. Regina could have been hurt, but
Regina is fine. But I'll tell you who isn't. Georgina.
Who the heck is Georgina?
Georgina is the girl you hurt. I am dating her dad, and you need to apologize to her tomorrow.
If you're talking about the tall girl with the long nose, then she needs to apologize to us and her dense brother.
Her name is Georgina, and I won't have you back-chatting me in my house, young lady.
The next day, Aunt Maggie had a barbecue, and Georgina, the mean girl from the carnival, glared at us scornfully and then put on a fake smile.
So, girls, Mike and I are soon to be married, which means he is family and so is Georgina and Garth. So I need you all to get along.
My brother and I have always been the good kids.